So what we need to do is we need to remove the liner, or at least we need to be able to move it. So you move that from underneath, two nuts there, and that one has I guess one nut and one nut there, and underneath there are a couple of these right there. There's one, there's another one there, and there's another one. That's one of those round flat things or flat screws with a big washer, and the other ones are just nuts like that. See? Okay, so and that's going to give us access to the back rear control arm bushing nut. Okay, and there's two additional ones. There's one right there uh, to be able to take the whole thing up, but you don't need to. Okay, you really don't need to take those two off. Well, yeah, go ahead and do that to be able to move it, I guess. Uh, those two other nuts were for the other thing on top. Let's get them out of the way and just move the liner out of the way. Just pull it out of the way so you can get to that back screw. Also, on the driver's side, you're going to have the brake lines and the ABS, so you have a bunch of lines. So, geez, the only way to do it is actually to do that. Now, you can go ahead and move the liner completely, and that'll, I don't know. You can if you want. You don't have to. But that gets that nut out of there, and we're just going to go ahead and do that. And then the cowl, that intake, you need to just remove just move it out of the way. You don't need to remove it, and that'll get you access to the nut on the front side of the control arm. And they're in there at 129 foot-pounds, so you're gonna have to get either a something, a breaker bar, or like I do, a long ratchet with an extension. Those are, you can get those pretty cheap at the Harbor Freight. Both the 3/8 and those. So that nut right there is a 21 millimeter nut, and on the ball joint itself it's going to be a 19 millimeter nut. So we're going to take that off, and luckily it's being held over here on this side. Every once in a while you're going to pull it back in there, get some torque. I don't know that you can get you can probably get a air ratchet in there, but oh, what the heck. So just go ahead and take that off and just remove the nuts, because you don't want that thing flying underneath. Now remember, at the beginning there was a note that you have to have a jack under the spring to lift it up, both to be able to take the front bolt off the ball joint in the front, and to be able to put the bolt back on there. So you need something to lift the spring, to be able to move the spring with a jack, so that you can just put that bolt back in there, and also to remove it to give it less tension. Otherwise you'll never get that bolt out of there. So take that bolt off. And again, it's that is a very long screw, which is probably a good idea. These older vehicles don't have the nut and that cotter pin. What they do is they put an indentation in the ball joint, and that screw fits in the indentation, which is probably a good idea to always remove the bolt and discard it and then get a new bolt. And they usually do come with new bolts. Not that it wears that much. It probably doesn't. But anyway, good idea. Especially on a very old vehicle. Now this vehicle here does not have that much mileage, but you don't want to get caught on the side of the road, and this thing has been making noises, so that's the reason to, it's not loose or anything, but it makes noises when you make turns, and so it's probably a good idea just to replace it before anything else wears out along with it. Don't have to get a mallet and do that. Never use a hammer. Use a mallet or a brass hammer. Okay, now that was my hand. I sort of just let too much slack in there in the jack, and it slammed down. You have to have a jack underneath, otherwise that spring will fly out of there. And, again, there's another reason for having those bolts in there, because if something like that happened, the whole thing would just come flying out with a spring. Okay, so you have to have something to hold it, otherwise that spring is gonna come out and out of there and either hurt you or maybe break some lines or whatever. So don't forget to put that jack underneath it. And also put the floor jack. Take a brass brush, clean it all out on both sides. Clean that rust out of there if there isn't, or at least smooth it out, get all that junk out of there, crud and all sorts of stuff, dust. So clean it all out with a brass brush, then follow it up with some silicone to make it easier to put in there. No use fighting it with a hammer. Just put some silicone in there and it'll make it a lot easier. So clean it up. Put some silicone. I use that for brakes. It's that clear silicone grease. And that 3M is probably the best. Don't use that black stuff. It dries up. But the 3M silicone is the best thing you can do for your brakes and for anything that requires bushings, rubber bushings. So put some of that 3M silicone grease. It costs about $30, but it'll save you a ton of problems. Especially on brakes, you don't want any overheating in your brakes, because you put some of that black stuff that dries up. So just slip right in it. It'll pretty much slip right in there. It's best to push them in evenly. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting one side. And again, get that done. Gotta get that liner out of the way. You're going to work underneath. And that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to pull it out when you're going to work over there and push it back in when you're going to work on these other things. Now see what I did? I did not line it in straight. So now I'm going to have to use a mallet to fit it in there. And that's the mistake that you do make. And just use a mallet and slip right in there with that silicone. Real easy, see? Otherwise you'd be, if you don't do that grease, you're going to be fighting it with a hammer back and forth and up and down. Just, make it a lot easier on yourself. So look at that. See, it got in there right away. And if the bolts fit in there easily, there's nothing in the way. So it just slips right in there. Little wiggle. Put the other one back in there. Now the reason I had to do a voiceover is because that radio was so loud. so I had to do a voiceover. I turned the volume down. Anyway, just a little tap on that side, kind of straighten it in there. See how it slips with that silicone? And another little tap and it'll fit right in there. Nothing much. Now the passenger side was a lot easier. I guess when you're making a video, it makes it harder sometimes. Little taps. If you give it a hard tap, it's going to get it all out of whack. There it is. Put the nuts back on. And don't tighten it because you're going to have to be moving it up and down to fit that ball joint back into the knuckle. That, and you don't have any other choice on the driver's side because there's so much junk on this side. And the brake lines. And if you have that ABS mounted up front, I mean, geez, that's even worse. Probably should have just taken the whole thing out, but not necessarily. And again, I didn't support that. Just put it up to the edge. Just leave it there. You don't even have to do that. Yeah, pretty much at the edge. And again, that's because if a mistake goes down, if there is a mistake downstairs, then you're going to have a lot of problems, so kind of put it back in more or less where it was. So, no, I don't make ratchet noises with my mouth, so probably should have speeded up the video than the voiceover. But anyway, it's a real quick job, you know. Just on the driver's side, it takes just a little bit longer. On the passenger side, you should be able to do this pretty quickly. There's nothing in the way of it. At least on this vehicle, there's nothing in the way. So the passenger side was already done, and I noticed there were a lot of complaints that nobody ever did the driver's side. So I thought I'd make this quick video here. put it up to the edge. Make it easy to move up and down. And also that silicone is another thing that helps by putting that silicone. You'll be able to move that freely up and down, or less freely, to be able to do what you have to do up front. And again, since this is a bolt slip in and not a nut with a cotter pin, you have to make it a little bit easier to use. And you're also going to have to be moving up the jack to make it such that the nut hole gets up to the ball joint, and it has to be just about to the edge. So you'll have to jack up the spring underneath with a lower control arm, and sort of fit it in there. And you're going to see me. I don't know if you did or didn't see me, but you know, moving the jack up and down to be able to put that screw back in, that bolt back in. So again, that mallet comes in handy. Don't use a hammer, use a mallet. Because a hammer will hit it hard enough to be able to do some damage to the bolts. And the mallet is a little gentler. You don't want to be caught with a bolt that's got a problem with it. Not be able to put the nut on. Once you do this, got everything back together, and you don't need the flow jack. So we're going to speed up the video, get the voice roll. Anyway, now we're going to torque them. Torque the back ones to 129 foot-pounds, which is pretty standard for just about every vehicle. All the control arm bushings are always at around 129. Ford, GM, and I suspect the other ones too. That's a pretty safe. 129 is pretty safe. Once you torque this to 129, you can get that thing out of the way. Get that fender liner more or less back, put it back in there. And we're having to do this because vehicle prices are absolutely ridiculous. I guess everything else is too, but geez. A lot of work to get 129. Right side, front side. believe that little thing right there holds it to 129 foot-pounds. Must be pretty hard steel. And then that bolt on the ball joint is 66 foot-pounds. All right, we're done. Now all we gotta do is put that intake, just that, the screwdriver, and put it back in there and on here. And that's all you gotta do. Put the nuts back in there. Put that right back where it was. Just it slips in there. It's got a screw that goes into the fender liner, and that one. It's got it in reverse. The fender liner has two in there where you just put the nut in. So let's slip that in there to the hose. Hold that thing and just slip it right back in. See, you can do much. And put those bolts back in. And that's it.